Hi everybody, welcome to Live Blogger. I have combined all the videos in our responsive website design series into this single long video so that it's easy for you to follow. Now in this video we are basically going to create this website right here using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. And this is also responsive, so here we have the mobile version of our website. In the end I'll also show you how to deploy this website online, and I will also leave the link of the source code in the description of this video. So let's get started. Now this is just an introduction to this tutorial series, and from the next video we will start writing the code. But in this video let me just show you the demo of this website. So here we can see we have this nav bar, and then we have this heading over here which has a linear gradient color. And then we have these buttons for downloading the app. Now this is basically a website for a task management app. And then on the right side we have this hero image, and if you scroll down we have featured on section, and we have these logos over here, and if you scroll down we have the features of the app displayed over here. And here we have this background element over here, and then we have the testimonials section which we have in 2 columns, and then we have the pricing table, and here we have some hover effects for this, and then if you scroll down we have the call to action, and then lastly we have the footer. And if you scroll up here we can see that we have these 3 different pricing plans, and all of them have similar type of data. So what we're going to do is we're going to store the data in a JavaScript file, and then we're going to generate the HTML based on the data. So we'll do the same for these features as well. And then here for this testimonials section we will add a slider for more testimonials, and this is also responsive. So let me just show you the mobile version. Alright, this is how the mobile version looks. Now for the mobile version we don't have the menu items displayed over here. We have this menu icon, and then we have all these elements over here, and all the elements are one below the other. And then we have all these logos one below the other. Then we have all the features displayed one below the other. And then we have the testimonials displayed over here, and then we have the pricing plans, and we have one pricing plan per row. And then we have the call to action, and then lastly we have the footer, and it also is displayed in a different layout. Alright, so that's basically it for the introduction video. Alright, here I have created this folder called responsive homepage, and I just opened it with VS Code. Now here I also have this folder called images, and in that we have all these images, and I will leave the link of these starter files in the description of this video. Right, now let's go ahead and start by creating the necessary files. So let's click on new file, and let's create a file called index.html, and let's create another file and let's name it style.css. And we also need to have a JavaScript file, so let's create a new file and let's name it main.js. Well, let's start with the index.html file. Now in VS Code you can just press exclamation and press tab, and you will have this basic HTML5 code. And here let's link our CSS file, so I'll just tap link and press tab, and in the href I'll just type style.css, and here in the body I'll just link the JavaScript file, so I'll just type script:/src and press tab, and here I'll just type main.js. And before starting with the markup of our design, let's go ahead and import the fonts that we need. So we're going to get the links of the fonts from Google Fonts. Right, here I'm in fonts.google.com, and the font that we need is called Poppins. So we need to have the bold version and also the regular version. So let's go over here and let's search for Poppins, and let's click on this font, and let's scroll down and let's select regular, so regular 400, and let's click on select regular 400, and let's scroll down and let's also select a bold version. So I'll just select this one right here, extra bold 800, so I'll just click on select. And now if we click on this button called view selected families, here we can see that the fonts are displayed over here. Now if you scroll down, here we have the link that we can add in the HTML. If you want to add it in the CSS, you can just click on import and you can copy this link. I'll just copy this HTML link and let's click on copy. And let's go back and let's paste it over here in the head section. And here for the title I'll just type welcome. Right now, let's open this HTML file in the browser. So I have this extension called Live Server installed in VS Code. So once you install this Live Server extension, you can just right click over here in the HTML and click on Open with Live Server. And now we can see that our website is displayed in the browser. We have the title Welcome displayed over here. Now let's start with the markup of our header. So first of all, we need to have this nav element. So let's go back and here inside the body, let's create a nav element. And in this element, the first thing we need to have is the logo. So let's create an anchor tag. And for the href, I'll just type hash. And here let's give it a class of logo. And here you can add the logo of your website. I'll just type logo. And here we can see that the logo is being displayed. And then on the right side, we need to have these three menu items. So for that, let's create a division. And let's give it a class of nav items. And we need to have three links over here: features, pricing, and download. So let's create an anchor tag, and here let's type features. And I'll just duplicate this 2 more times. And for the second one, we need to type pricing. So let's type pricing. And here we need to type download. Alright, that's it with the nav. Now let's go ahead and create the header. So this whole section over here is going to be inside the header. So let's create a header element. And in this header element, we need to have a container so that we have all these elements inside a specified width. Now for the header element, we're going to add this background color so that it will have the full width of the browser window. But for all the content inside our header, we need to have it inside a specific width. So let's add a division for that. And let's give it a class of container. Now in this container, we need to have a left section and also a right section. Now for the left section, let's create a division with the class of left. And here let's create an h1 for the heading. And I'll just copy this text from here. And I'll just paste it over here. And now let's create a paragraph. And I'll just copy this text over here. And I'll just paste it over here. Right now we need to have these 2 buttons over here. So let's go ahead and create a division. And let's give it a class of buttons. Now for each of the buttons, let's create an anchor tag. So let's create an A tag over here. And let's give it a class of download btn. Now in this button, we need to have this icon on the left side and the text content on the right side. So for the icon, let's create a division with the class of btn icon. And let's create an img tag, and let's type images / and I have an icon called appstorlogo.svg. And let's create another division for the text. So I'll just create a division with the class of btn text. And let's create a division for this text, get it on. So let's type get it on. And then we need to have app store. So let's create a division and let's type app store. And let's copy this button from here. And I'll just paste it down here. And for the second button, let's change the icon to Google Play. And for the text, we need to have download it on Google Play. So let's type download. And here let's type Google Play. And then lastly, on the right side, we need to have this hero image. So this is the left division. So let's go outside the left division. And let's create a division with the class of right. And here we need to have an img tag, and let's type images / and I have this image called heroimage.png. And let's go ahead and save this, and let's go back to our browser. And here we can see that all the elements of our website are displayed over here. Now let's go ahead and style this using CSS. So let's go back to our code, and we have already linked the CSS file over here. So let's go to style our CSS file, and the first thing we need to do is we need to select all the elements, and we need to type box sizing to border box so that all the elements have the correct height and width. And then let's add some styling for the body. So let's type body. And right now if we go over here to our page, we can see that we have some margin over here. So let's type margin 0. And now we can see that all the margin is gone. Now let's set the font family. So let's tap font family and let's set it to Poppins and sans serif. And I'll also set the background color. And let's set the background color to F5, F4, F4. And this is how it looks. Right now let's add some common styles. So let's select all the paragraph tags. And let's set the line height of all the paragraph to 180%. And let's set the font size of all the paragraph to 16 pixels. And now let's select all the anchor tags. So let's tap A. And we don't want to have underlines for the anchor tags. So let's tap text decoration and let's set it to none. And we'll also set the color of the anchor tags to black by default. So let's tap color 000. Right now let's go ahead and start with the styling of the nav. So for the nav we have this nav element over here. So let's target that. I'll just tap nav. And first of all let's set the position to fixed, so that even if you scroll down, the nav should always be on the top. And now let's set the top value to 30 pixels. And let's add a background color. So let's tap background. And let's set it to a linear gradient. And let's tap 90 degrees. And for the first color, let's tap RGBA 255, 255, 255. And for the opacity, let's tap 0.6. And this will be for 0%. And then let's tap RGBA 255, 254 and 254, and let's set the opacity to 0.4 and let's tap 100%. And this is how it looks. Let's also add some blur. So let's tap backdrop, filter, and let's set it to blur, and I'll just set the value to 10 pixels. And this is how it looks. Right now let's set the width of the nav to 900 pixels. So let's tap width 900 pixels and let's bring it to the center. So let's tap left 50%. And now it starts from the center. So let's tap transform, translate X, negative 50%. And now it is exactly in the center. And now we need to have the logo on the left side. And we need to have all these three elements on the right side. So for that, let's set the display to flex and justify content to space between. And now we can see we have the logo on the left side and these three elements on the right side. Let's also add some padding. So let's type padding and let's set the padding to 12 pixels top and bottom and 32 pixels left and right. And let's also add a border radius and let's set it to 24 pixels for rounded corners. And we'll also have a box shadow. So let's tap box shadow and let's set the values to 0, 4 pixels, 50 pixels and negative 8 pixels, RGBA 0, 0, 0 and 0.2. I think we can play with the opacity a little bit. So here let's change this to, let's try 0.9, and I think that looks alright. But now let's also set a Z index for the nav so that it is always on the top. So let's tap Z index and I'll just set it to 300. Right now let's target the logo. So if you go to the HTML file, here we can see we have this anchor tag with a class of logo. So let's type nav logo and let's set the font weight to bold and let's set the font size to 18 pixels and we'll set the color of the text to 8300B6 and this is how the logo looks. Right now let's style these nav items. So for that we have this division with the class of nav items. So here let's tap nav items and let's set the display to flex and let's set a gap of 50 pixels between each of the elements. Right, I think that's it with the nav element. Now let's go ahead and start with the styling of the header. So let's go back and for the header we have this header element. So let's target that. I'll just create a comment. I'll just type header and let's type header and for the header we will have a height of 100 viewport height, and we'll set a min height of 600 pixels, so it will have at least 600 pixels. And we'll also set a max height so that the height should not be greater than, let's try 800 pixels. And now let's add a background color, so let's tap background and let's set it to linear gradient, and let's tap 90 degrees, and let's set the color values to C2CEFE, and here I'll just tap 0%. And for the next color, let's type F7A3FE, and let's tap 100%. And now we can see we have this background color for the header. Right now we need to have all these elements on the left side and the hero image on the right side. So if we go back to the HTML file, here we have created this division with the class of left, and we have another division with the class of right, and both of them are inside this division with the class of container. So for the container we need to have a display of flex so that the elements are one next to the other. So I'll just tap header, container, and let's set the display to flex, and justify content to space between, and let's also type align items to the center so that it is centered vertically, and let's set the height of the element to 100% of the parent, which is header. Right now we need to have a max width for the container. Now this container over here, we'll be using it in all the other sections as well. So let's write some common styles for that. So here I'll just type container, and let's set a max width of 900 pixels, and we'll also bring it to the center by tapping margin inline, and let's set it to auto so that the left and the right will be set to auto. And now we can see we have the correct width for the element. Now for the left division we'll also have a max width, so let's tap header, left, and let's set a max width of 500 pixels. Right now let's go ahead and style this heading. So the heading is an H1, so let's type H1, and let's set the font size to 50 pixels, and let's set the line height to 120%, and let's set the margin to 0. Right now if we go back to our original design, here we can see that for the text we have this linear gradient color. So let's see how to do that. Let's go back over here and let's type background, and let's set it to linear gradient and 90 degrees. And for the first color let's type 230127 and 0%. And for the second color let's type 9E08FB and let's type 100%. Right now let's go back to our design, and now we can see that we have this background color added to the text. Now we need to set the color to the actual text. So for that you have to type WebKit text fill color, and you need to set it to transparent, and then you have to type WebKit background clip, and you have to set it to text. And for different browsers we have to have different properties. So let's type background clip and let's set it to text. And now we can see we have the linear gradient color for the text. Right now let's style this paragraph. So let's type header left P, and let's copy these CSS from here and let's paste it over here. And let's go ahead and change these colors a little bit. So for the first color let's type 080022, and for the second color let's type 8300B6, and this is how it looks. Right now let's go ahead and style these buttons. Now we need to have these buttons one next to the other. So let's type header, and for the buttons we have this division with the class of buttons. So let's type buttons, and let's set the display to flex, and let's set a gap of 24 pixels. And now we can see that the buttons are one next to the other. Right now let's style the buttons. So for each of the buttons we have an anchor tag with a class of download btn. So let's target that. I'll just type download btn, and let's set a background color of black, and let's set the color of all the text to white, and let's set the display to flex so that the icon is on the left side and the text on the right side. And we'll also align it to the center. So let's tap Align Items Center. And let's add a gap of 16 pixels between the elements. So let's tap Gap 16 pixels. Right now let's set a padding. And let's set the padding to 8 pixels top and bottom and 16 pixels left and right. And let's set the border radius to 10 pixels. And we will set the font size to 14 pixels. And this is how it looks. Now let's go ahead and set the same width for both these buttons. So let's type width and let's set it to 210 pixels. Right now let's decrease the height of these icons. So let's type download btn. And if you go back to the HTML file, here we can see that we have this division with the class of btn icon, and in that we have the img tag. So let's tap btn icon img, and let's set the height of the icons to 36 pixels. And now we can see that it is not exactly in the center, so for that we have to tap display of flex. And now we can see it is exactly in the center. Right now for the text at the top, we need to set it to uppercase, and for the bottom text we need to set the font weight to bold. So let's do that. So for that let's tap download btn text. So here we can see we have this division called btn text, and in that we have these two divisions. So let's tap div, and we need to target the first division, so we can just type colon first child, and this will select the first division. And let's set the text transform to uppercase, and now we can see that the first text has this uppercase. Now let's select the second element, so it is basically the last element, so you can just type download btn text div colon last child, and let's set the font weight to bold, and this is how it looks. Right now let's decrease the height of this image a little bit. So the image is inside this right division, in that we have this img tag. So let's type header right img, and let's set the height to 460 pixels. And just like we did for these images, we need to set the display to flex so that it is exactly in the correct position. So let's tap display of flex. I think we can increase the line height a little bit for these two text. So let's go back and let's go to the H1. So here we have set a line height of 120. Let's try 130%. And I think that looks alright. And let's also change the line height of this paragraph. Here we can see for the paragraph we have set a line height of 180. And I think for the header we'll just change the line height. So here let's go to the paragraph of the header, and here let's type line height, and I'll just set it to 200%. And I think that looks alright. So with that we have completed styling the header of our website. Now in this video we will see how to design this featured on section and also this features section right here. Now in this video we'll just add one of these cards over here, and we'll just design it using HTML and CSS. And in the next video we will add these details over here using JavaScript. So let's get started. Alright, so here I'm in the source code of our design, and let's go outside the header, and let's create a new division. And if you go back to the original design, here we can see that all this content is inside a specific width. And if you go back to our HTML file, here we can see that we have created this division with the class of container. And if you go to the style.css file, and if you scroll up, here we can see that for the container we have set a max width, and we have set the margin inline to auto so that it is in the center. And that's why we can see that all the content inside the header has this width of 900 pixels, and it is in the center. So we can make use of this container division right here. So let's go back to the HTML, and here let's go outside the header, and let's create a division with the class of container. And now whatever we type over here will have a max width of 900 pixels. So if I just create some text, I'll just type testing. And now if you go to our design, now we can see that we have this max width of 900 pixels. It doesn't start from all the way to the left. Right, so let's go back, and first of all let's create a section. So let's create a section tag, and for each of the sections we will have some IDs. So for this one, let's add an ID of featured. So this section is for this featured section right here. Right now let's go back, and in this section the first thing we need to have is a heading. So let's create an h2, and here let's start featured on. And now for all the content inside the section, let's create a division with the class of content. And in that, for all these logos, let's create a division with the class of logos. And in this we will have all these 4 logos. So let's create an img tag, and here in the src let's type images /. And the first logo is for HubSpot, then we have Pinterest, Reddit, and Spotify. So let's add these logos over here. So I'll just type HubSpot logo.svg, and I'll just duplicate this 3 more times. And the second logo that we need to have is Pinterest, and the next one is Reddit, and then lastly we have Spotify. Right now let's go back to our website, and this is how it looks. We have the heading and all these logos over here. Now let's style it using CSS. So let's go back to the style.css file, and here let's create a comment, and I'll just call it featured section. Now the first thing we will do is we will add a common styling for all the sections. So I'll just type section, and for all the sections we will have a padding of 50 pixels top and bottom, and 32 pixels left and right. Right now let's add a particular styling for all the headings inside the section. So let's type section h2, and we'll set the color of all these headings to 8300b6, and we'll set the text align of all of these to center, and we'll also remove all the margins, and we will just have a margin bottom. So let's add a margin bottom, and let's set it to 16 pixels, and this is how it looks. Right now let's style this featured section. So for that we have this ID of featured. So here let's type #featured, and first of all let's set the background color of this section to white, and now let's add a box shadow, and let's set the values to 0, 5 pixels, 55 pixels, -15 pixels, RGBA 0, 0, 0, and 0.2. And let's also add rounded corners. So I'll just type border radius, and let's set it to 10 pixels. And now for this featured section, we'll just decrease the padding a little bit. So if you go over here to the section, we can see that we have added a padding of 50 pixels for top and bottom. Now just for this featured section, I'll just reduce the padding a little bit. So I'll just have padding top, and I'll just set it to 30 pixels. And I think that looks alright. Now if you go back to the original design, here we can see that this featured on section is a little bit on top of this header section. So we need to add a negative margin top for that. So let's go over here, and let's type margin top, and let's set it to -80 pixels. I think we can increase it a little bit more. So let's try 90 pixels, and I think that looks alright. Right now let's style these logos. So for the logos we have a division with a class of logos. So here I'll just type featured logos. We will set the display to flex, and we will add a gap of 60 pixels between all of these logos, and we'll just bring it to the center. So I'll just type justify content center, and that's basically it with the featured section. Right now let's go ahead and start with this features section over here. So for that let's go back, and let's go to the HTML file, and let's go outside this section, and let's create another section. And for this we will give it an ID of features. Now even in this we need to have a heading. So we need to have a heading of features. So let's create an h2, and let's type features. And then we need to have this card. So we'll create all of that inside a division with the class of content. Now in this content we need to have each of these cards. So I'll just create a division with the class of feature card. Now in this card, the first thing we need to have is this icon. So let's create a division with the class of icon. And let's create an img tag, and for the src let's type images / and I'll just add this icon called create task icon.svg, and here we can see we have the icon, and then we need to have the heading for this card. So for that, let's create an s3, and I'll just copy this heading from here and I'll just paste it over here. And then we need to have a paragraph, and in that we'll just add this sentence. So just copy this and paste it over here. And that's basically it with the feature card. Now let's go ahead and copy this feature card, and I'll just paste it 2 more times so that we can style it better. So just copy this feature card from here, and I'll just paste it 2 more times. Right now let's go to our CSS file, and let's start styling this. So first of all, let's create a comment. I'll just type features. And first of all, let's go ahead and target the feature card division. So let's type features, feature card, and let's add a background color of linear gradient, and let's set it to 90 degrees. And for the first color, let's type EBFEFE, and let's set it to 0%. And then for the second color, let's type EAFEF3, and let's set it to 100%. And let's go back to our design, and this is how it looks. Let's also add border radius and also some padding. So let's type border radius, and let's set it to 20 pixels, and let's set a padding of 24 pixels. Right now let's go ahead and target this heading, and I'll just set the font size to 18 pixels. So let's type features S3, and let's set the font size to 18 pixels. Right now let's go ahead and target this icon. So for the icon, we have this division with the class of icon. So I'll just type features icon, and for the icon, let's set a height of 60 pixels and a width of 60 pixels, and we'll set a border radius of 10 pixels, and let's add a background color of linear gradient, and let's set it to 90 degrees. And for the first color, let's type FEE3E0, and let's set it to 0%. And for the next color, let's type FEE9E6, and let's set it to 100%. Now we also need to bring this icon to the center, so let's type display of grid and place items to the center. And the width is not set to 60 pixels, so let's go back, and here we have this typo. We need to type PX. Right now we have the correct height and width for the icons. Right now the last thing we need to do is we need to have 3 of these feature cards in a row. So for that, let's go back to the parent division, which is this division with the class of content, and that we have all these feature cards. So let's target this content division. So I'll just type features content, and let's set the display to grid, and we'll set the grid template columns to 1FR, 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 and we'll set a gap of 24 pixels between each of the elements. And this is how it looks. So that's basically it with the feature cards of our website. And in the previous video, we designed this features section over here, and this is how it looks right now. Now in this video, we will add different features over here using JavaScript. So if you go to the original design, here we can see that all the features are displayed over here in our website. Right now we just have the same details for all these cards. Now in this video, we will use JavaScript to display different features in these cards over here. So let's get started. Right, here's my source code, and if you go to the HTML file, here we can see that we have the features section, and in that we have this feature card. And right now we have copied it 2 more times so that we have 3 feature cards over here. So we have these 3 feature cards over here. Now what we need to do is we need to generate these feature cards using JavaScript. So let's go to the main.js file, and let's create an array of objects. So I'll just create an array called features list. Now in this array, we can add different objects. So if you go to the HTML file, here we can see that first we need to have this image for the icon, and then we need to have the heading, and then we need to have this paragraph. So we need to store these details in our JavaScript file. So here let's tap icon, and let's add the link of the image over here. So I'll just copy this link from here, and I'll just paste it over here. And the next thing we need to have is the title. So let's create a key called title, and here let's copy this title from here, and I'll just paste it over here. And then we need to have the description. So let's create description, and let's copy the description from here, and I'll just paste it over here. Now in this way we need to create all the features that we need in our JavaScript array. So I'll just go ahead and quickly do that. Right, I have copied the details of all the features over here. So we have the first feature over here, then we have the second feature, we have the icon, the title, and the description, and we have it for all these features that we need. Now let's go back to our HTML file, and I'll just delete these two features from here, and I'll just keep the first feature and I'll just comment it. So let's select this first feature card, and you can just comment it by pressing command and /, or if you are using Windows you can just press control and /. Now if you go back to our browser, we can see that the features are not being displayed. Now we need to display the features using JavaScript. So we need to generate this HTML using JavaScript. So let's go back to our JavaScript file, and let's create a function for that. And I'll just create a function called display features, and I'll just call it over here. So I'll just create the function over here. So I'll just type const display features, and let's create an arrow function. Now what we need to do is we need to loop through all these feature list. So let's use a for each loop for that. So I'll just have feature list dot for each, and for each of the features I'll just call it f, and let's create an arrow function. Now here the first thing we need to do is we need to create the HTML. So I'll just copy this HTML from here. I'll just copy from this line of code till here. So we have everything inside the feature card division. So I'll just copy this HTML from here, and let's go back to our JavaScript. And here let's create a constant called HTML, and I'll just add the HTML over here. So I'll just use backticks and paste the HTML over here. Now what we can do is we can replace all these details from the details that we get through this for each loop. So let's go ahead and delete this image over here, and to use a variable you can just type $symbol and curly braces, and here you can add any variable. Now we are getting all these features with this variable f, so we can just type f dot, and we can add these properties over here. So let's click on icon. Now what this is going to do is it is going to loop through all these features, and from each of these features we're going to get the icon, and we're going to add the icon over here inside the src. Let's do the same for the title. So let's delete this title, and let's tap $symbol curly braces, and let's tap f dot title, and the same should be done over here for the paragraph. So let's tap $symbol curly braces f dot description. Right now what we need to do is we need to create this division with the class of feature card. So for that let's create a division. So let's tap const feature card equals document.create element, and we need to create a div. So let's tap div over here, and we need to add a class of feature card. So let's type feature card dot class list dot add, and here let's tap feature card. Now in this feature card we need to add this HTML. So let's type feature card dot inner HTML equals HTML. So it will add all this HTML inside this feature card. Now what we need to do is we need to add this feature card to this content division inside the features section. So let's target this division right here. So for that we can just create a constant, and I'll just call it features content equals document.querySelector, and we have an ID of features, and in that we have the division with the class of content. Right now let's scroll down, and let's type features content dot append child, and in that we need to add this feature card. So let's type feature card. Right, now let's go back to our browser, and now we can see that all the features are displayed over here. So all this data is being fetched from the JavaScript file. So if I just go back to our JavaScript file, and if I just make some changes over here, so for example, if I just change this to updated title, and now if you go back, here we can see that it says updated title. So that's how you can display these features in our website using JavaScript. Now let's also design this testimonial section over here. So let's go back to our HTML file, and let's scroll down, and let's go outside this section, and let's create a new section, and let's give it an ID of testimonials. And just like all the other sections, let's create a division with the class of content. And in that we need to have this left section and this right section. So for the left, let's create a division with the class of left. And in this we need to have a heading, so I'll just copy this heading from here, and let's create an h2 and paste the heading over here. And then we need to have a paragraph, so let's create a p tag, and let's copy this paragraph from here, and I'll just paste it over here. Right, now let's go ahead and create the right section. So let's create a division with the class of right. Now in this right division, let's create a division for this testimonial card. So I'll just type dot testimonial card, and in that we need to have this icon. So for that, let's create a division with the class of quote icon, and I'll just change this to a span, and in this I'll just create an img tag, and let's type images / and I have this image called quote icon.svg. And the next thing we need to have is the review. So let's copy this review from here, and let's go ahead and create a division with the class of review, and let's paste it over here, and I'll just change this into a paragraph. And then we need to have the information about the reviewer. So let's create a division for that. I'll just create a division with the class of reviewer info, and in that we need to have the image. So let's create a division with the class of image, and in that we'll have the img tag, and let's type images / and testimonial1.png, and then we need to have the other details on the right side. So let's create a division for that. Let's create a division with the class of details, and here let's create a division with the class of name, and let's type John Smith, and then we need to have the designation. So I'll just copy this, and I'll just create a division with the class of designation, and I'll just paste it over here. Right, now let's go back to our website, and we can see that all the details are displayed over here. Now let's go to our CSS, and let's start styling this. So let's create a comment. Let's tap Testimonials Section. Right, the first thing we need to do is we need to position the two divisions, left and right divisions, side by side. So let's target the container division, which is content. So let's target content inside the testimonials. So just type testimonials content, and let's set the display to flex so that the elements are one next to the other. And let's set the justify content to space between, and we will have a gap of 80 pixels between the elements. Now for the left division, we will have a specific width. So let's tap testimonials, and in that we have this division with the class of left. So let's type dot left, and let's set the width to 360 pixels. And right now the width is not being added, so for that we need to set the flex of this right division to 1. So let's tap testimonials right, and let's set the flex to 1 so that it will take up the available space. Now for the heading inside the testimonial, we need to have a different styling. So this styling is being added from all the other headings over here. So for the testimonials, we need to have a different styling. So here we have a different color, and it is also text aligned to the left. So let's target that. Let's tap testimonials left h2, and let's set the text align to left, and let's set the color of the text to black. Right, now let's style this quote icon. So we will position this quote icon relative to this right division. So for the right division, let's set the position to relative, and now let's target the quote icon which has this class of quote icon. So I'll just tap Testimonials, quote icon, and let's set the position to absolute, and we will set the top position to -20 pixels and the left position to -50 pixels, and let's set the opacity to 0.3, and let's also increase the height of this icon. So inside this quote icon division we have this img tag, so let's target that. I'll just tap Testimonials, quote icon, img, and let's set the height to 60 pixels, and that looks alright. Now let's go ahead and style the reviewer info. So if we go back to the HTML file, we can see that we have this division with the class of reviewer info, and we need to display these two elements side by side. So let's set the display of this reviewer info to flex. So just type Testimonials reviewer info, and let's set the display to flex and align items to the center and a gap of 16 pixels. Right now let's style the image. So let's type Testimonials reviewer info img, and let's set the height to 60 pixels. And now let's style this name. So let's tap Testimonials reviewer info name, and let's set the font weight to bold, and let's target this designation. So let's tap Testimonials reviewer info designation, and let's set the font size to 14 pixels. Right, that's basically with the right division. Now if you go back to the original design, here we can see that we also have this background element. So let's add this. So I'll just create a span for that. Let's go to the HTML file, and let's go just below the last division and just before the section ends, and let's create a span over here, and let's give it a class of bg element, and let's go to our style or CSS file and let's style this. Now we need to position this relative to this testimonials section. So let's target the testimonials section. So here I'll just tap Testimonials, and let's set the position to relative. And now let's target the bg element. So let's tap .bg element, and let's set the position to absolute, and we'll just set the height to 760 pixels, and let's set the left position to -50 pixels and the right position to -50 pixels as well. And let's set the bottom position to 0, and now let's add a background color. So let's tap background, and let's set it to linear gradient and 90 degrees. And for the first color, let's tap FDD7E8 and 0%. And for the second color, let's tap FEE5FA 100%. And now we can see that we have the bg element, but it should be behind all the other elements. So let's set a z index. So just tap z index, and let's set it to -1. And now we can see that we have the correct bg element over here, and everything looks alright. Alright, so that's basically it for this video. In the next video, we will add different testimonials over here. So we will add a next and previous button, and when we click on the buttons, we will go to the next and the previous testimonials, and we will do that using JavaScript in the next video. Right here I'm in the source code, and this is the testimonials section. So here inside this testimonials section, let's create a division. So we'll create a division for the next and the previous buttons. So let's create a division with a class of navigation buttons, and in this we need to have two buttons, one for the previous button. So let's create a division for that. Let's give it a class of prev btn, and then we need to have the next button. So let's create a division, and let's give it a class of next btn, and we need to add the icons of the next and the previous buttons over here. So let's create an img tag, and in the src let's tap images / and I have this icon called chevron left.svg. And now for the next button, let's go ahead and create an img tag, and in the src let's tap images / and chevron right.svg. Right now let's go back to our design, And here we can see we have the next and the previous buttons over here. Now we need to position this correctly over here on the right side. So let's style this using CSS. Let's go to our style.css file and let's go ahead and type testimonials, navigation buttons, and we need to set the position to absolute, and we'll set the right position to 20 pixels and the bottom position to 40 pixels. And let's see how it looks. So here we can see we have the next and the previous buttons. Now we need to bring them one next to the other. So let's add a display of flex and we will add a gap of 2 pixels. Right now let's style the images inside these navigation buttons. So let's tap testimonials, navigation buttons, img, and let's set the height of the images to 26 pixels. Right now let's go ahead and add some styling to the container division, which is previous button and next btn. So let's tap testimonials, prev btn, and also testimonials, next btn, and let's set the background color to white. And if you go back to our design, this is how it looks. Now we need to bring this image to the center, so let's set the display to flex, and now it is in the center. And let's also set the cursor to pointer, so let's tap cursor pointer, and now when we hover over this we have this pointer. Now by default we will set the opacity to a lesser value, so let's tap opacity and let's set it to 0.7. And now let's type testimonials, prev btn colon hover, and testimonials, next btn colon hover, and let's set the opacity to 1. And now if we go back, now we can see that we have the opacity set to 0.7, but if you hover over this we have the opacity set to 1. Right now what we need to do is we need to display different testimonials over here. So let's go ahead and store all the data of the testimonials inside our JavaScript file. So let's go to the main.js file and let's create an array of objects for that, just like we did for feature list. So here let's type const, and I'll just call it testimonials list. Right now in this object we need to have the review, the image, the name, and the designation. So let's go ahead and add all these details over here. Let's type review, and let's copy the review from here. So I'll just copy this review from here and let's paste it over here. And the next thing we need to do is add the image. So let's type image and let's copy the source of the image and let's paste it over here. And then we need to have the name. So the name is John Smith. So let's copy this and let's paste it over here. And then we need to have the designation. So let's type designation and let's copy the designation and let's paste it over here. Right now in this way you need to add all the testimonials that you want over here. So I'll just go ahead and quickly copy all the testimonials. Right here I have copied all the testimonials that I need. So we have 3 testimonials over here. We have the review, image, name, and designation for all of them. Now let's go ahead and go to the style.css file, and here for the testimonial card, so if you go to the HTML file, here we can see we have this division with the class of testimonial card. So what we're going to do is we're going to set the opacity of this division to 0 by default, and we will set the opacity back to 1 when we need to display the testimonials. So let's go over here to the style.css file and let's type testimonials and testimonial card, and let's set the opacity to 0. And we're going to add a class called active when we want the testimonials to be displayed. So let's type testimonials, testimonial card dot active, and here I'll just set the opacity back to 1. And we'll also add a smooth transition. So let's tap transition and let's set it to all 300 milliseconds ease. Right now if we go back to our website, here we can see that the testimonials are not being displayed. Now we're going to display the testimonials using JavaScript. So let's go to the JavaScript file and Let's write some code for that. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a variable for keeping track of the current testimonial. So here I'll just type let current testimonial index equals, and by default we'll set it to 0. Now we're going to display the testimonials based on this index right here. So let's scroll down and let's create a function for that. So I'll just create a function called display testimonial. Right now, just like we did for all the other functions, let's go ahead and create a constant for the HTML. So let's type const HTML equals, and let's add backticks. Let's go back to the HTML file and let's copy the HTML. So here we can see we have the testimonial card. Let's copy everything inside this division. So let's copy from here till here, and let's go ahead and copy and paste it over here. Right now, let's go ahead and make the changes. So let's select this review and let's delete it. And we need to add the testimonial review over here. So let's type $symbol curly braces, and here let's type testimonials list. And here we need to add the index of the testimonial. So if we scroll up here, we can see that we have already created this variable which is called current testimonial index. So let's type that over here, current testimonial index, and from that we need to get the review, because here we can see we have named it review. So let's type dot review, and we need to do the same for the image name and designation. So I'll just copy this from here and let's paste it over here, and here let's change this to image, and let's copy it over here, and let's change this to name, and let's copy it over here, and I'll just change this to designation. Right now what we need to do is we need to add this HTML inside the testimonial card division. So let's go ahead and select this division. Let's go over here to the JavaScript and let's type const testimonial card equals document.querySelector and testimonials testimonial card, and let's scroll down and let's add the HTML to the testimonial card. So here let's type testimonial card dot inner HTML equals HTML, and then we need to add a class of active. So let's type testimonial card dot class list dot add active. But now let's see whether this works. So let's call this function display testimonial, and let's go back to our website, and here we can see that the first testimonial is being displayed. Let's go ahead and change the index. So let's change the index to 1. Now the second testimonial should be displayed. So if you scroll up, here we can see that for the second testimonial we have this testimonial right here. So let's see whether this is being displayed. Let's save it, and here we can see that we have the second testimonial displayed. So everything is working. If we change this to 2, we have the third testimonial displayed. Now we need to change these using the next and the previous buttons. So for that, let's go ahead and reference the next and the previous buttons. So here we have this division with the class of prev btn and next btn. So here let's type const prev btn equals document.querySelector testimonials prev btn, and const next btn equals document.querySelector testimonials next btn. Right now let's add event listeners for these. So here let's type next btn dot add event listener, and let's listen for the click event. Let's create an arrow function over here. Now here we need to increase the current testimonial index by 1. So let's type plus plus over here to increment it by 1. And after that we need to call the display testimonial function. So let's type display testimonial, and let's go back to our design and let's click on the next button, and nothing is happening. So let's see what's the problem. Let's right click over here and let's go to inspect, and let's go to the console, and here we have this error that cannot read properties of null. So let's go back. Let's see what's the problem. So here we have this typo, testimonials. Right now let's go back and let's click on the next button, and we have the next testimonial displayed. Let's click on the next button once again, and we have the last one displayed. Now if you click on the next button, we will have an error. So if you go back to the console, here we can see we have this error. So when we click on the next button, we have the error. That's because we don't have more testimonials. So for that we need to add an if condition. So here let's add an if condition, and let's see whether the current testimonial index is greater than or equal to testimonials list dot length. And if it is greater than the length of the testimonials list array, then let's go ahead and set the current testimonial index back to 0. So let's type current testimonial index equals 0. Right now let's go back to our design and let's see whether it works. So let's click on the next button. We have the next testimonial. Let's click on the next button, and this is the last testimonial. Let's click on the next button once again, and we are back to the first testimonial. So everything is working alright. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to add a fade in transition. So if you go to the CSS file, here we can see that we have already added this transition. So here inside this event listener, let's go ahead and remove the active class first. So let's type testimonial card dot class list dot remove active. And what we need to do is we need to set a timer, and we need to execute these lines of code after a specific period of time. So for that, let's create a set timeout. So I'll just type set timeout, and for the timeout I'll just set it to 200 milliseconds. And let's go ahead and copy all this code from here, and let's paste it over here. Right now let's go back to our design, and let's click on the next button, and here we can see we have this transition. Right now let's go ahead and write the functionality for the previous button. So it is pretty much the same. So I'll just copy this code from here, and let's paste it down here. And here I'll just change this to prev btn. Here we need to decrement, so I'll just type minus minus, and here we need to check whether the value is less than 0. So let's go ahead and type less than 0. And if the value is less than 0, then we need to set the current testimonial index to the last value. So we can get that by typing testimonials list dot length minus 1. And that's basically it. So let's go back to our design, and let's click on the previous button, and we are going back to the previous testimonials. And if I click on the next button, we go to the next testimonials. So with that, we have completed creating this testimonials section. Right here I'm in my source code. So let's go ahead and create a new section for pricing. So let's give it a class of pricing, and in this section we need to have 3 of these plans. So first of all, let's add this heading. So I'll just copy this heading, and let's create an h2, and let's paste the text over here. And in that, let's create a division with a class of content, and in this we will have all the plans. So for each of the plan, I'll just create a division with the class of plan. So let's go ahead and create a division with the class of plan. And in this, the first thing we need to have is this heading. So let's create an h4 for that. And the first plan is for basic. So I'll just type basic over here. Later we're going to store all this content inside our JavaScript file. But for now, let's go ahead and write the HTML over here so that we can style it using CSS. So here we have these different features. So for this, I'll just create a division, or let's create an unordered list, and let's give it a class of plan features. Now in this we will have list items, and the first one is 50 tasks. So I'll just copy this, and let's paste it over here. Now in the same way, let's go ahead and copy and paste all these list items over here. Alright, so I have created all these list items over here for this plan, and let's go to our design and let's see how it looks. So here we can see we have the plan. Now we need to style this. So before that, let's go ahead and copy this 2 more times. So I'll just copy this and paste it 2 more times over here. And now let's style this. So let's go to our style.css file, and let's create a comment. I'll just type pricing section. And now if we go back to our design, here we can see that all these pricing plans are one below the other. So I'll just set the display to grid. So I'll just type pricing content, and let's set the display to grid. And we'll set the grid template columns to 1FR, 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 which means 3 items in a row. And let's add a gap of 20 pixels. So I'll just type gap 20 pixels. Right now, let's go ahead and style the container division, which has a class of plan. So let's type pricing plan. And for this, we need to set the background color to white. And we need to add a border radius of 10 pixels. And let's set a padding of 24 pixels. Right now, let's go ahead and remove these bullets. We're going to add an icon over here. So let's go back to our style.css file and let's target the UL. So let's type pricing UL, and let's set the list style to none, and we will also set the padding to 0. Right now, let's style these list items. So let's type pricing ULLI, and let's set the margin to 16 pixels top and bottom and 0 for left and right. And we'll also set a line height, and let's set it to 1.8. Right now, let's style this plan name. So for that, we have this h4, and we have this class of plan name over here. So let's target that. I'll just type pricing plan name, and for the plan name, let's set the font size to 30 pixels, and we'll set the margin to 0. Right now, let's style the price. So for that, we have this division with a class of plan price. So let's go back over here and let's type pricing plan price, and let's set the font size to 20 pixels, and let's set the font weight to bold. And then lastly, we have this button. So let's go back to the HTML file, and for the button, we have this anchor tag with a class of btn. So let's target that. I'll just type pricing btn, and let's set a background color of black, and let's set the color of the text to white, and let's add a padding of 8 pixels top and bottom and 32 pixels left and right, and let's set the width to 100%, and let's set a margin top of 24 pixels. And the margin top is not being added. That's because this button is an inline element. So we have to type display of inline block, and now we have the margin displayed. Now let's also add a border radius. So I'll just type border radius, and let's set it to 10 pixels. And this is how the button looks. Now let's also add a hover effect. So if you go back to the original design, here we can see that we have this hover effect over here. So let's add that. So let's go back, and here let's type pricing button colon hover. And when you hover over this, we need to increase the scale. So let's type transform scale, and let's set it to 1.03, and let's add a transition, and let's set it to all 200 milliseconds ease. And now we can see we have this hover effect. Now we also need to add an icon over here before all these features, but we will do that in the JavaScript. Right now, the next thing we need to do is we need to display these different plans over here, and we're going to use JavaScript for that, and we're going to store all this data inside a JavaScript array. And just like we did for all the other sections like features and testimonials, we're going to store the data in JavaScript and display it using JavaScript. So let's go back to our JavaScript file, and here let's create an array. So I'll just create an array called plans, and in this we will have 3 objects for each of the plans. Right here, the first thing we need to have is the name. So we have the plan name over here. So I'll just type name, and we'll just set it to the name. So the name is basic. So I'll just type basic. And the next thing we need to have is the list of features. So here we can see that we have different features over here. Now for this, we're going to create an array inside this object. So let's create features, and here let's create an array, and in this we need to have all these features. So first we have 50 tasks, so we need to add that over here, 50 tasks. And then we need to add the next feature over here, which is deadline tracking. So in this way you have to add all these features over here. So I'll just quickly go ahead and do that. Right, so I have added all the features. Now the next thing we need to have is the price. So let's type price, and for the first one we need to set it to free. And then lastly we need to have the link. So here we can see that we have this button, and here we need to add a link. So for each of the plans we will have different links. So let's add the link over here. So just type link, and here we can add the link. I'll just type hash for now. Now in this way you need to add all the plans you have in your website over here. So I'll just quickly copy and paste the plans over here. Right here I have copied and pasted all the plan details. And now let's go ahead and see how to display it in our website. So first of all, let's go back to our HTML, and I'll just delete the second and the third plan. And I'll just comment this first plan over here. Right now let's go ahead and copy this HTML from here. So we need to copy from this line of code till here. So this is everything that we have inside this plan division. So let's copy this, and let's go back to our JavaScript file, and let's create a function for that. So I'll just create a function called display pricing, and let's create the function over here, const display pricing. Now here we need to loop through all the plans. So we have this array with the name of plans. So let's loop through this array. So I'll just have plans dot for each, and for each of the plan I'll just call it p. Now in this we need to add the HTML. So let's create a constant for that. I'll just type HTML equals, and let's add backticks, and let's paste the HTML over here. And then we need to add this HTML inside a division with the class of plan. So let's create the division over here. So I'll just type const plan equals document.createElement div, and let's give it a class of plan. So let's type plan dot classlist dot add plan, and we need to add the HTML to the plan. So let's type plan dot inner HTML equals HTML, and then we need to add the plan inside this content division, which is inside pricing. So let's target this content division. So here in JavaScript I'll just reference that. Here I'll just type const pricing content equals document.querySelector pricing content, and let's scroll down, and here let's type pricing content dot append child, and let's add the plan inside here. Right now we need to add the details inside our HTML. So the first thing we need to do is change the plan name. So let's type $symbol curly braces, and let's type p dot, and we have the name, and then here we have these features. So we need to add that as well, but we'll do that later. Before that, let's go ahead and add the price and the button link. So here let's type $symbol curly braces and p dot price, and here for the link let's type $symbol curly braces p dot link. Well, now we need to take care of these features. Now this is basically an array inside this array, so we need to also loop through this array. So what we're going to do is we're going to create another constant over here, and let's call it features HTML, and let's set it equal to p dot features, and we're going to use the map function in JavaScript. So let's type dot map, and what map does is that it will loop through all the items inside the array, and it will return something out of that. So what we need to do is we need to return an HTML from all these features. So the HTML that we need returned is this list item with the feature inside that. So here for each of the features I'll just call it f, and here let's add parentheses, and here we can add the code that we want to be returned. So let's use backticks, and let's create an li, and let's close the li over here, and in this li we need to add the feature. So we are calling the feature f over here. So I'll just type $symbol curly braces f Now what this will do is it will store all the features as list items, and it will store it inside this features HTML. Now we can go ahead and add the features HTML over here. So I'll just delete all these list items, and here let's type $symbol curly braces, and let's type features HTML. Now let's go back to our website, and here we can see all the plans are displayed over here. We also have the features displayed. Now there are two things we need to do. First of all, we need to remove these commas from here, and then we also need to add this icon. So first of all, let's add the icon. So here inside the li, let's create a span, and in this span we will add the icon. Let's also give it a class so that we can style it in the CSS, and let's give it a class of icon, and here let's add an img tag, and in this img tag let's add an src, and let's set it equal to the image. So let's type images /, and I have an image called check icon. So here we have the icon check icon.svg. So I'll just add that over here, check icon.svg, and let's save it. Right, now let's go back to our website, and here we can see that the icons are displayed. Now let's also add some margin. So let's go to the style.css file, and let's target the icon. So let's type pricing ulli icon, and let's add a margin right of 10 pixels, and here we have the margin. Now here we can see that we also have comma displayed over here after every feature. So for that we need to add some code to the JavaScript. So here, after mapping through all the features, we also need to type .join, and here we need to type blank. So this will remove the commas, and now we can see that our pricing table looks alright. So it looks just like the original website. Now in this video we will design this call to action and also this footer. So let's get started. Right, here I'm in the source code, and let's go ahead and create a new section, and let's give it an ID of CTA. And the first thing we need to have is a heading. So here we have this heading, get started today. So I'll just copy this, and let's create an h2, and let's paste the text over here. The next thing we need to do is we need to create a division with the class of content, and in that we need to have this paragraph. So I'll just copy this, and let's create a p tag and paste the text over here. And then the last thing we need to have are these buttons, and these are the same buttons that we see over here. So we can just copy the same HTML. So let's go back to the hero section, and here we have these two buttons. So I'll just copy these buttons from here. So we have this division with the class of buttons. So just copy it, and let's paste it right here after the paragraph. Right, now let's go back to our design, and this is how it looks. Now let's style it using CSS. So let's go to a style.css file, and let's create a comment. Let's type CTA. The first thing we will do is we will text align this paragraph to the center. So I'll just type CTA content, and in that we have P, and let's set the text align to center. Now we need to have a fixed max width for this section. So here we can see we have a lesser max width. So here let's target the container division. So let's type CTA content, and let's set the max width to 600 pixels. And now we have these buttons, and these should be one next to the other. So here we can see that the buttons are one next to the other. Now let's go back to our CSS, and let's see what's the problem. So let's scroll up, and here we can see for the buttons we have targeted header buttons, so it will only affect the buttons inside the header. So I'll just remove this header from here. So now let's save this, and now we can see that we have the buttons displayed correctly over here in the hero section, and if you scroll down, here also we have the button displayed correctly. Now we need to bring these buttons to the center as well. So let's go ahead and set the container division to display of flex. So here for the content, let's type display of flex, and let's type align items to the center, and let's set the flex direction to column. Now let's type margin of 0 auto to bring everything to the center, and we'll also add some padding bottom to this content. So let's type padding bottom, and let's set it to 32 pixels. Now we will reduce the gap between this paragraph and this heading. So for the paragraph, we can just add a negative margin. So I'll just type margin top, and let's set it to -8 pixels. Let's also add some margin bottom. So let's type margin bottom, and let's set it to 32 pixels. And I think that looks alright. Now let's go ahead and start with the footer. So let's go back to our HTML file, and let's go outside this division, because for the footer we need to have full width, and we need to have this black color, and in that we need to have the container division. So this division over here, which is the main division, has this class of container, and for that we have set a max width. So let's go ahead and create a footer element, and in this we'll create the container division. So let's create a division with the class of container, and in this we will add all the content. So let's create a division with the class of content. And now for the footer, we need to have the left section and the right section. So let's create a division with the class of left. And in this left section, we need to have this logo and this text. So I'll just copy this text. And for the logo, let's create a division with the class of logo, and let's type logo. And here let's create a paragraph, and let's paste the text over here. And if you go back to the design, here we have the left part of the footer. Right now we need to create the right section. So for that, let's go outside this left division, and let's create a division with the class of right. And we have these two groups of links over here. So for that, let's create a division with the class of links. And in that we need to have a heading. So I'll just create an S3, and let's type quick links. And then we need to have these three links over here. So for these three links, I'll just create a UL. And in that we will have list items, and in the list items we will have anchor tags. And here let's type about us. And then we need to have privacy policy and terms and conditions. So I'll just copy this list item, and let's paste it 2 more times. And here we need to have privacy policy, and then here we need to have terms and conditions. So here we have these links. Now we need to create this group of links. So let's create another division with a class of links. And in that we need to have another heading. So let's create an S3, and let's type contact us. And in this we need to have these 3 contact options. So for that, let's create an unordered list, and let's create list items. And in that we will have these contact details. So I'll just copy this and paste it over here. And then let's create another list item, and let's copy this and let's paste it over here. And then lastly we have the address. So let's copy this address from here, and let's paste it over here. Right, that's basically it with the right section. So let's go outside this right section, and let's create another division for this copyright section over here. So let's create a division with the class of copyright. And in this we need to have a paragraph, and here we need to type designed by live blogger. So let's copy this, and let's paste it over here. And then we need to create these social links. So let's create a division with the class of socials, and in this we'll create anchor tags. And here you can add the link of your social media accounts. And here in this anchor tag, let's create an img tag. And for the src, let's type images / and I have this image called Facebook logo.svg. Let's copy this anchor tag 2 more times. And the next image is for Instagram, and then we have Twitter. So let's type Instagram, and here let's type Twitter. Right, now let's go back to our design, and this is how it looks. Now let's style it using CSS. So let's go to a style.css file, and let's create a comment. I'll just type footer, and first of all let's target the footer, and we have this footer element. So let's give it a background color. So let's type footer, and let's set the background color to linear gradient, and let's set it to 90 degrees. And for the first color, let's type hash 0a1300 and 0%. And for the next color, let's type hash 001e0f and let's type 100%. And now we can see we have this dark background color. And let's set the color of all the text to white. And here we can see that we have this white text color. And let's also add a padding top. So let's type padding top, and let's set it to 50 pixels. And for the links also we need to have a white color. So let's target all the links. So I'll just type footer A. And let's set the color of all the text to white. Right now let's set the display of the content to flex so that the left portion will be on the left side and the right division on the right side. So here we have this division with the class of content, and in that we have the left and the right divisions. So let's type footer content, and let's set the display to flex, and let's set the justify content to space between so that they are on the extreme left and right sides. And here we also have this copyright section on the right side. So let's go back to the HTML file, and we need to add the copyright section outside this content division. So let's copy this copyright section from here, and let's cut it from here, and let's paste it outside this content division. And now we can see that the left section is on the left side and the right division on the right side, and we have the copyright at the bottom. Right now let's style the logo. So let's type footer logo, and let's set the font size to 24 pixels, and let's set the font weight to bold. Right now let's target this paragraph, and let's remove the margin top. So let's type footer left P, and let's type margin top of 0. Right now we need to have both these links side by side. So it is inside the right division. So here we have this right division, and in that we have these links. So let's set the display of the right division to flex. So let's type footer right, and let's set the display to flex. And we'll also add a gap of 40 pixels. Right now let's remove the margin top from this S3. So here inside the links we have this S3. So I'll just type footer S3, and let's set the margin top to 0. Right now let's target this unordered list. So I'll just type footer UL, and let's remove the bullets. I'll just type list style, and let's set it to none. And let's also remove the padding. So I'll just type padding of 0. Right now let's style these list items, and let's add some margin. So I'll just type footer ULLI, and let's add a margin of 8 pixels top and bottom, and 0 for left and right. Right now let's style this copyright section over here. So for that we have this division with the class of copyright. So let's type footer copyright, and first of all we need to have a border top. So here we can see we have this border. So let's type border top, and let's set it to 1 pixel solid RGBA, 255, 255, 255. And for the opacity let's type 0.4. And here we have this border. I think we need to have some gap between this line and this top section. So let's go to the UL, and here I'll just add a margin bottom, and let's set it to 40 pixels. And now I think that looks alright. Right now let's continue styling this copyright section. So we need to have these two elements side by side. So let's set the display to flex, and let's set justify content to space between. And let's also add a padding. So I'll just type padding, and let's set the padding to 20 pixels top and bottom, and 0 for left and right. Right now let's style these icons. So let's type footer, and we have a division with the class of socials, and in that we have these img tags. So let's type img, and let's set the height of the images to 40 pixels. Right now let's add some gap between these elements. So let's type footer socials, and let's set the display to flex, and let's add a gap of 40 pixels. And I think that looks alright. I think these icons are placed a little bit to the top. So here for the copyright section, let's type align items to the center. And now we can see that they are exactly in the center. And with that we have completed designing the footer of our website. Now here in this nav bar, I feel that these links are not exactly in the center. So let's go back to the CSS, and let's go to the nav, And here for this nav element, let's also set align items to the center. And now they are exactly in the center, and with that we have completed designing the desktop version of our website. Right, so here I have reduced the width of the browser window, and let's start writing the code for making it responsive. Now the first thing we need to do is we need to make some changes to this nav bar. Now if you take a look at this, we can see that we have a logo on the left side, and then we have these nav menus. Now what we're going to do is in the mobile version we will have this logo on the left side, and on the right side we will have an icon for displaying these menu items, and when we click on the icon we will display these menu items as a pop-up. So let's do that. So let's go to the style.css file, and let's scroll down, and let's add a media query. So here let's type @media, and let's set the max width to 600 pixels. Now whenever the width of the browser window is less than 600 pixels, all the styles inside this block will be applied to our design. Now here the first thing we need to do is we need to hide these nav items from the nav bar. So if you go back to the HTML file, here we can see we have this division with the class of nav items, and in that we have these menu items. So let's hide this division. So here inside this media query I'll just type .nav items, and let's set the display to none, and it is not being hidden. So let's see what's the problem. Let's scroll up, and here we can see for the nav items we have this selected nav, so we also need to add nav in front of nav items. So we basically need to add more specificity. So here we can see we have nav items. So let's scroll down, and here let's type nav items. Now we can see that the nav items are hidden. Now the next thing we will do is if we go back to the desktop version, here we can see for the body we have a different background color. Now for the mobile version we will set the background color of the body to white. So let's type body, and let's set the background color to white. And now let's go ahead and style the nav element. So let's type nav, and if you scroll up to the desktop version, here we can see for the nav we have this width of 900 pixels. Now for the mobile version we need to reduce the width. So let's scroll down, and here let's type width, and let's set the width to a calc function, and in that we'll just type 100% minus and 30 pixels. And now we can see we have the correct width. We have 30 pixels of gap between the edges. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to create a menu icon over here. So for that let's go back to the HTML file, and here after the nav items division, let's create a division with the class of menu icon, and in that we will have an img tag, and in the src let's type images/menu icon.svg, and here we can see we have the menu icon displayed. Now if you go back to the desktop version, here also we have the menu icon displayed. So let's hide it from the desktop version. So here in the style.css file, let's go outside the media query, and let's add a comment. I'll just type hidden items, and here let's type nav menu icon, and let's set the display to none. And now we can see in the desktop version we don't have the menu icon displayed. Now let's reduce the width of the browser window, and here in the mobile version we need to have the menu icon displayed. So here let's type nav menu icon, and let's set the display to block, and we'll set the cursor to pointer, and we'll just reduce the height of this icon. So let's type nav menu icon img, and let's set the height to 30 pixels, and we'll also bring it to the center by typing display of flex. Right, now let's go ahead and style this header. Now for the header we need to have these elements on the top, and then we need to have this image at the bottom. So if you go back to the desktop version, and if you take a look at the header, here we can see for the container of the header we have set the display to flex, and that's why these elements are one next to the other. Now what we need to do is we need to set the flex direction to column so that these elements are one below the other. So let's copy this selector from here, let's scroll down, and let's paste it over here, and here let's type flex direction, and let's set it to column. Now if you scroll up, here we can see that we have also set a height. So here we can see for the container we have set a height of 100%, and if you go to the header we can see that we have set a max height of 800 pixels. Now we need to set the max height to fit content so that it will have the height of the content inside the header. So let's scroll down and let's type header, and let's set the max height to fit content. And we also need to set the height to fit content. So let's type height fit content. And now we can see that we have the correct height. Right now let's change the height of this image. So the image is inside this right division over here, and that we have the image. So let's type header right img, and let's set the height to 350 pixels. Now this featured content is displayed on top of the image. That's because we have set a negative margin. So if we go to the featured section, here we can see that we have set a margin top of minus 90 pixels. So let's go ahead and change that. Here I'll just add a comment. I'll just type featured section, and here let's type hash featured, and let's set the margin top to, let's try 40 pixels, and that looks alright. Now let's go ahead and add some padding top to this header, because here we can see that we have the nav bar displayed on top of the heading. So let's go back to the header, and here let's type padding top, and let's set it to 160 pixels, and that looks alright. Now for all the container divisions, let's go ahead and add a padding. So here we can see that we have this container division for all the content. So let's type container, and let's set a padding of 0 for top and bottom and 32 pixels left and right. Right now let's style this heading. We need to reduce the font size of this heading. So let's type H1 because we have an H1 for the main heading, and let's set the font size to 40 pixels. Right now we need to have these two buttons one below the other. So let's type buttons, and in this buttons division we have these two buttons. This is the first button and this is the second button. So let's go ahead and set the flex direction to column, and now we can see that the buttons are one below the other. Right now let's scroll down, and here we have these sections. Now for all the section headings, let's add a specific styling. Now when we are on the mobile version, let's go ahead and add an underline for these headings. So here let's type section, and for the headings we have H2. Now for adding the underlines, we will use the after selector. So let's type section H2 colon colon after, and let's set the content to blank, and we need to position this after selector relative to this H2. So let's type position relative over here, and here let's type position absolute, and let's add a background color of black, and let's set the width to 30 pixels, and let's set the height to 2 pixels. And now here we can see we have this line. Now we need to position it to the bottom. So let's type bottom 0, and we need to bring it to the center. So let's type left of 50%. And now it is starting from the center, so we have to type transform translate x negative 50%, and now it is exactly in the center. Let's also add margin bottom for the H2, and let's set it to 40 pixels, and I think that looks alright. Right now let's display all these logos one below the other. So if you go back to the HTML file, here we can see that we have this division with the class of logos, and in that we have all these images. So we have already set the display to flex. So we can go ahead and set the flex direction to column. So here let's type featured logos, and let's set the flex direction to column, and let's set a gap of 40 pixels between the elements, and we need to change the size of these images. So let's type featured, and let's type img, and let's set the height to 30 pixels, and that looks alright. And that's it with the features section. Now let's go ahead and style this features section. Now we need to have all these features one below the other. So let's add a comment, and let's type features, and if you go to the features section, here we can see for the features content we have set the display to grid, and we have set the grid template columns to 1fr 1fr 1fr, which means 3 columns. Now we need to set this to just 1fr so that we have just one column. So let's copy this selector, and let's scroll down, and here let's type grid template columns 1fr, and now we can see that we have just one item in a row. Now here I think we also have some padding for the sections. So let's right click over here and let's click on inspect, and let's select a section, And here we can see for the section we have this padding. So let's remove the left and right paddings from the section for the mobile version. So here I'll just type section and let's type padding inline for selecting padding left and padding right, and let's set it to 0. And now we can see that we don't have any padding left or padding right for the sections. Right, now let's style the testimonial section. So here also we have these two columns. Now we need to bring these elements one below the other. So let's target the division. So here we have this division with the class of testimonials, and in that we have this content division, and in that we have the left and the right divisions. So let's target this content inside the testimonials. So just add a comment, testimonials, and let's type testimonials content, and let's set the flex direction to column. And for the left division we have set a max width, so let's remove that. So if you right click over here and go to inspect, if we click on this left division, we have set this width of 360 pixels, so we need to remove the width. So here I'll just type testimonials content left, and let's set the width to 100%. Now for the underline of the testimonials header, let's go ahead and bring it to the left side. So if we scroll up here, we can see that for the section heading we have this after selector for the underline, and here we have set the position to left of 50%. So let's go ahead and copy this code, and I'll just paste it down here, and here I'll just type testimonials, and in that we have this left division, and in that we have the H2, and for that we have the after selector. So I'll just delete all these properties from here, and we'll set the left position to 0, and we'll set the transform translate to 0. And now we can see we have the underline in the correct position. Now let's also remove the margin between the heading and this paragraph. So let's type testimonials left H2, and let's set the margin bottom to 0. Right, now let's go ahead and bring this quote icon to the right side. So let's select that. We have this pan with the class of quote icon. So let's type testimonials right quote icon, and let's set the left position to -10 pixels, and I think that looks alright. And we also have the buttons working alright. Now let's go ahead and increase the height of this BG element. So we have this background element over here which has this pinkish color. So I think it is inside the testimonial section. So let's go back to the HTML. Here we can see inside the testimonials division we have this BG element. So in the desktop version we have already added some styles. So here we have the BG element. Let's go ahead and copy these styles from here. Let's scroll down and let's paste it over here, and I'll just remove the unnecessary styles. First of all, we need to have the height, so I'll just set the height to 1900 pixels. You can experiment with this value. And then for the left and right positions, I'll just type 30 pixels. And this is how it looks. We have the BG element till here. So I think that looks alright. I'll just delete all the other styles. Right, now let's go ahead and style the pricing section. So let's add a comment. I'll just type pricing section. And if you go back to the HTML file, here we can see we have this division with the class of content, and in that we have these plans. Now we are generating these plans from the JavaScript file, and if you go back to the style or CSS file, and if you scroll up, here we can see for the pricing content we have set the grid template columns to 1FR, 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 which means 3 columns. So just copy this and let's scroll down and let's paste it down here, and I'll just delete these 2 lines of code, and I'll just change this to just 1FR, so we have just 1 column, and I think that looks alright. Now let's go ahead and remove the padding from the left and the right. So I'll just type pricing plan, because we have this division with the class of plan, and let's type padding inline for selecting padding left and padding right, and let's set it to 0, and now we can see that we have the correct padding. And then we have this CTA section, and it looks alright. And then lastly we have this footer. Now for the footer content we have set the display to flex, So if you go to the content, here we can see that we have set the display to flex. Now we need to set the flex direction to column. So let's tap footer, and let's tap footer content, and let's set the flex direction to column. And now we can see that the content of the footer is one below the other. Now this is the right section of the footer, so we need to add flex direction of column to that as well. So if we go back to the HTML file, we can see that we have this division with the class of right, and in that we have these links. So let's target that, and let's tap footer, right, and flex direction to column, and this is how it looks. And I think we have a lot of gap between these two links. So here we can see in the desktop version, we have set a gap of 40 pixels. So let's reduce it. I'll just copy this, and let's paste it down here. And I think it is for the right division. So I'll just cut this gap from here, and I'll just paste it over here. And let's try different value. So I think let's try 10 pixels, and I think that looks alright. Now let's also add some margin top for this links division. So here I'll just tap margin top, and let's set it to 10 pixels. And I think we'll try 20 pixels. And I think that looks alright. And then lastly, we have this copyright section, and it is also a display of flex. So we can just type flex direction to column. So I'll just tap footer, copyright, flex direction, column, and this is how it looks. So with that, we have made our design responsive. Now the last thing we need to do is we need to add the functionality of this menu icon. So when we click on this menu icon, we want the menu to be displayed over here. And when we click on each of the menu items, we want to be scrolled to that specific location. And we want to have that functionality for these menus as well. So if I click on features, I should be redirected to this section right here. So we will do that in the next video. So the first thing we need to do is we need to go to the HTML file, and we need to create a new nav element. So here we have this nav element for the desktop version. So let's go outside this, and let's create a nav element, and let's give it a class, and we'll give it a class of mobile nav menu. And in this we need to add these anchor tags. So I'll just copy these anchor tags, and I'll just paste it over here. Before that, let's go ahead and add these href values over here. So here we can see that we are linking the features section over here. So if you scroll down, here for the features section, we have this ID of features. So what we can do is we can just go ahead and type hash features over here. And now if you go back to the desktop version, and if I click on this features menu, we are taken to the features section. And let's go ahead and add the href for all the other anchor tags. Now we have pricing. So if you scroll down, for the pricing section, we have this ID of pricing. And then for download section, we have this ID of CTA. So let's add these IDs over here. So I'll just type pricing and CTA. And let's test it out. So let's click on features, and we are taken to the features section. We have pricing. So let's click on pricing, and we are taken to the pricing section, and we are taken to the download section. Now we need to scroll to the top a little bit. So we need to get also this heading displayed. So we will do that using JavaScript later. But for now, let's go ahead and style this mobile nav menu. So I'll just copy these anchor tags, and I'll just paste it over here. And now we can see that the mobile nav menu is displayed over here, but we need to hide it by default. So let's go to our style.css file, and let's add some styles for that. So here let's create a comment. I'll just type mobile nav menu, and here let's target the division. So I'll just type mobile nav menu, and let's add some styles over here, and later we will make it invisible by default. So first of all, let's go ahead and set the position to fixed. Now the styles of the nav of the desktop version is also added over here. So let's go back to our HTML, and I'll just change this into a div so that we have a completely new styling. Right, so now let's go ahead and set the right position to 32 pixels, and let's set the top position to 100 pixels, and let's add a background color of white. And we need to bring these menu items one below the other. So let's set the display to flex, and let's set the flex direction to column. Right now let's add a padding, and let's set it to 8 pixels and 16 pixels. And let's add a gap of 16 pixels between the elements. And let's set the font size to 16 pixels, and we'll also set the border radius to 10 pixels. Now let's add a box shadow, and let's set the values to 0, 4 pixels, 40 pixels, negative 8 pixels, RGBA 0, 0, 0 and 0.2. And now what we need to do is we need to hide this by default. So let's set the opacity to 0. And now if you hover over this area, we can still click on the links. So let's also set the pointer events to none. And now we cannot click on the links. So now let's go ahead and add the styles for the active class. So when we want it to be displayed, we will add a class called active to the mobile nav menu. So let's type mobile nav menu dot active, and here we will set the opacity back to 1, and we'll also set the pointer events to auto, and we'll also bring it down from the top. So let's also add transform translate y, and let's set it to minus 10 pixels. And when we add the active class, I'll just reset the transform translate y. Right now let's write the code to display and hide the menu items. So for that we need to reference this mobile nav menu division and also this menu icon. So let's go to our main.js file, and let's go ahead and reference those elements. So here I'll just type const menu icon equals document.querySelector, and let's type menu icon, and then we have mobile nav menu. So let's type const mobile nav menu equals document.querySelector mobile nav menu. And now let's add an event listener to this menu icon. So here let's type menu icon dot add event listener, click, and here we need to add and remove the active class to the mobile nav menu. So let's type mobile nav menu dot class list dot toggle, and let's type active for the class. So what we are doing over here is that if we have the class active, then we will remove it, and if we don't have the class active, then we will add it. So let's see whether this works. So let's click on this menu icon, and we have the mobile nav menu displayed, and if I click on this menu icon once again, it disappears. But we don't have the smooth animation, so let's go back to the style.css file, and here we need to add a transition. So let's type transition of all, and let's set it to 300 milliseconds ease. And now let's test it out. So let's click on this menu icon, and we have the animation. Now the last thing we need to do is when we click on these menu items, we need to go to that section. So if I click on features, we are taken to the features section, but we need to scroll to this position right here. Now if I click on this features link, we are taken to this position where the heading is not being displayed. So we also want the heading of the section to be displayed. We are taken to the correct position of the features section, but because of this nav bar, we are not able to see the heading. So we're going to fix that using JavaScript. But here we can see that we are not able to click on this link sometimes. So we need to set a z index so that it is above all the other elements. So here for the mobile nav menu, let's add a z index, and let's set it to 600. And now we are able to click on these links. Right now let's fix this positioning of the scroll using JavaScript. Before that, let's go ahead and add smooth scrolling. So here let's add HTML, and let's type scroll behavior, and let's set it to smooth. And now if I click on these links, we are smoothly taken to that place. Right now let's fix the positioning using JavaScript. So let's go back to our main.js file, and here we need to reference all these links, and after that we need to add some event listeners to all of them. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the HTML file, and for all the links that we need scrolling, we will add a class. So here for features, I'll just add a class, and let's set the class to nav link, So let's copy this same class to all the links where we want it to scroll to a certain position. So let's paste the class over here as well. And we will do the same for these mobile nav menus. Right now, let's go ahead and reference all these nav links. So here I'll just type const nav links equals document.querySelector all, because we have multiple elements. And let's type .nav link, and let's scroll down. And let's add an event listener to all the nav links. So we need to loop through all the nav links. So I'll just type nav links dot for each. And for each of the links, I'll just call it link. And let's create an arrow function, and let's type link.add event listener, and we will listen for the click event. And let's create an arrow function over here. And now the first thing we need to do is we need to prevent the default behavior. So let's add a variable name over here, and here we need to type the variable name, which is e.preventDefault. So this will prevent the default behavior of the link. So if I click on the link now, nothing happens. So now let's go ahead and create a constant for the target ID. So I'll just type const target ID, and that is going to be equal to the href of the link. So if you go back to the HTML file, here we can see for these anchor tags, which has this class of nav link, we also have this href, and in that we have the ID. So we need to go to this ID right here. So let's go ahead and type link dot get attribute, and we're going to get the attribute called href. So this will store the attribute inside this target ID constant. Right now, let's go ahead and type const target element, and here we need to get the element, the actual element. So we need to get the section with the ID. So for example, we have features section, we have the testimonial section, and so on. So for that, let's type document.querySelector, and here let's type target ID. So we are getting the target ID from here. Right now, let's go ahead and check whether we have a target element. And if we have a target element, then we need to scroll to that position. So let's type window.scroll to, and here let's type the position. So we need to offset the position a little bit. So let's create a const for that. I'll just type const offset, and it is going to be equal to target element dot offset top, and we'll just offset it by 60 pixels. And here let's go ahead and type top, and let's set it to offset. Now this should scroll to the position, and it should be 60 pixels to the top. So let's go ahead and see whether this works. So let's go ahead and click on features, and now we can see we are taken to the correct position. You can go ahead and change this value and optimize it according to your needs. Let's click on pricing, and we are taken to the correct section. So everything is working all right. Now when we click on this nav links, let's also hide this mobile nav menu. So let's see how to do that. Here we have already added an event listener to the links. So here let's go ahead and type mobile nav menu dot class list dot remove active, and let's see whether it works. So let's click on features, and we can see that when we click on these links, the mobile nav menu disappears. And let's go back to the desktop version, and let's see whether it works over here as well. So let's click on features, and we are taken to the features section, and we have scrolled to the correct position. And we have this mobile nav menu displayed over here in the desktop version as well. So let's go back, and let's go to the style.css file, and let's hide it over here in the desktop version. So here we are already hiding this menu icon. So let's type mobile nav menu, and now we can see that the mobile nav menu is not displayed in the desktop version, and here it is displayed. So everything is working all right. Right, so here I'm in netlify.com, and you can deploy your websites on netlify.com for free, and they have different pricing plans. So if I click on pricing, here we can see they have this starter plan, and you can get started with this free plan, and then you can go ahead and subscribe to these plans if needed. So let's go ahead and log into this Netlify account. So if you have a GitHub account and if you are logged in, you can just go ahead and click on login, and you can just click on login with GitHub. Or if you want to log in with email, you can do that as well. So I'll just log in with GitHub. Alright, so here I have logged into my Netlify account, and this is how it looks. This is one of our previous websites. Now let's go ahead and see how to deploy our website. So the first thing you need to do is go to Sites. And here we can see that we have this option of dragging and dropping our site folder over here. And you also have this option of adding a website from a GitHub repository. But I'll just go ahead and show you how to drag and drop your website folder over here. Right here I have my website folder, and in that we have this folder called website, and in that we have these files. So you have to go ahead and drag and drop this folder to your Netlify account. So I'll just drag this website folder over here and drop it over here. And now we can see that the website is being uploaded. And that's it. We have successfully deployed our website. So let's go ahead and open the website. So you can just click on this button, Open Production Deploy. And here we have our website, and everything is looking alright. Let's see whether the testimonials are working alright. So everything is working alright. Let's also take a look at the mobile version, and it is also working alright. So that's how easy it is to deploy your website using netlify.com. Now if you take a look at this, we can see that we have this random URL over here for our website. Now you can go ahead and change this. So let's go back and let's click on Options, and let's go to Deploy Settings. And here we can change the settings. So let's go ahead and click on Domain Management, and let's go to Options, and let's click on Edit Site Name. And here you can go ahead and add your website name. So I'll just change this to Task Management App.netlify.app. So let's go ahead and click on Save. And this site name is already taken, so you can go ahead and change anything. I'll just add 1, 2, 3, and let's click on Save. And now we can see that this is the URL of our website. So if I go to this link, here we can see that the website is being displayed. So in this way you can go ahead and change the URL of your website. Now here we can see at last we have netlify.app. Now if you want to add your custom domain, you can do that as well. So here if you scroll down, here we have the option of adding a domain. So you can just go to this link and take a look at the steps of adding a custom domain, and you can add your custom domain over here as well. Alright, so that's basically it for this video, and this is how you can deploy your website using Netlify for free. Now I will leave the link of the source code of this website in the description of this video, so you can just go ahead and copy and paste and make changes to the code. So that's basically it for this video. If you have any doubts, you can ask in the comments below, and if you like this video, please click on the like button and subscribe to this channel to get the latest video updates. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a nice day.